Here in this video we will dive deep and address the widely asked question regarding how strong orcs of Middle-earth were. Let's begin with size. This metric often determines strength. Unlike in many anime and superhero movies, where you'd see smaller people easily defeat larger opponents, in real life or more realistically, the bigger the individual, the stronger they are, unless they are really obese. Size often correlates with strength due to the advantages of greater muscle mass, reach and leverage. In the context of Middle-earth, Tolkien's description of orcs present them as creatures that are corrupted and vile. They are generally described to be shorter than men, with hunched postures that even make them appear even smaller. Even Frodo and Sam were able to hide amongst orcs in Mordor while they were on their way to destroy the One Ring, which certainly shows that there are orcs that would have been the size of hobbits, which means in the range of around 4 feet. This means that orcs would have less muscle mass and reach than men or elves, and thus by that logic would have been weaker physically. The Peter Jackson movies show a different thing, them being bigger on average and even as strong as men or elves, which might not have necessarily aligned with Tolkien's vision for the orcs. While there are larger breeds or just individual specimens of orcs that are bigger, they are not really widespread. There are some that might approach the height of a man. These are mainly the Uruk-hai, which are bred by Saruman in Isengard and Sauron in Mordor, and have a little bit of human blood in them. These Uruks were larger and stronger due to them being a result of breeding regular orcs with goblin men or even half-orcs. The former were implied to be the result of Saruman rediscovering Morgoth's secrets and attempts to breed orcs and men at Isengard, while the latter might have pre-existed beforehand. And this is evident with the fact that the goblin men were stated to be a part of the Dunlendings that flocked to Saruman's banner in Isengard and were regarded as one of the strongest of his servants. The Great Goblin, on the other hand, is one unique specimen of his race. He was described as being tremendous in size, and thus with the same logic applied, his size would have made him physically stronger than most men, well, in my opinion. There were also some of these huge orc chieftains that appeared in The Hobbit and other Tolkien works, which are more of exceptions than the rule. Individuals like Azog and Bolg wouldn't have been as large or as mighty as they are shown in the Hobbit movies, but they are still notable specimens of their race, maybe around man size, and definitely larger than the dwarves. Azog in the books killed Nain, the father of Dane Ironfoot, at the Battle of Azanul-Bizar. He was shown to have skill in fighting, as he easily dodged the strikes of Nain, who was regrettably already winded and half exhausted at that time. Still, the orc managed to kill single-handedly the dwarf lord, but was unable to behead him due to the strong neck armor that the dwarf possessed. On the other hand, while his son Bolg was shown to be at par with Legolas in the movie in terms of fighting, the books didn't really describe any of it other than him inheriting his father's forces and dying in the hands of Beorn in the Battle of the Five Armies. So we can clearly state that the orcs in Middle-earth were smaller in stature when talking on average, but were more numerous and bred faster than any of the other races. They relied heavily on sheer numbers to achieve victory, often throwing countless warriors into battle, even if it meant suffering catastrophic losses. Their masters, which for most of the time would be either Morgoth, Sauron or one of their lieutenants, don't really care for the massive deaths, since these vile creatures, the orcs, were only bred for one thing, and that is war. So the orc tactics, if they had any, weren't about strategies but about crushing their enemies under waves of bodies, a method that often led to Pyrrhic victories. There is a line somewhere in Lord of the Rings about how one Gondorian man is still worth at least 3 orcs in battle. In early days, the disparity was even greater when the Dunedain are taken into account. The disaster of the Gladden Fields vividly demonstrates the orcs' relentless and ferocious nature in combat, as well as their total disregard for life, even their own, and how they are weaker than men. The orcs surrounded Isildur's small force there, closing in from all sides. They then hurl a great mass of their chief warriors down the slopes against the Dunedain, who have formed a shield wall, and this stood firm, with the orcs being slain. In a second attack, some of the greater orcs leapt 2 at a time, and with their weight, dead or alive, eventually overwhelmed the men. This maneuver combined weight and aggression, aiming to destabilize individual Dunedain by dragging them down and crushing them outright by the weight of their bodies. Once a man fell, the Orcs would swarm him, ensuring his death before he could recover. So there, the Orcs lost 5 for every Dunedain warrior, but was still a price that they were more than willing to pay. This thing highlights the stark contrast between the two forces. The Dunedain valued each life and fought with precision and discipline, while the Orcs operated with a savage, almost animalistic disregard for their own. But to be fair, there are tales or even mentions of Orcs of the elder days being strong and as powerful as the elves of those times. But to address this, we have to take a look at the origins of the Orcs, which are one of the darker, more tragic tales in Middle-earth's history. So the widely accepted lore is that they came out as the result of Morgoth's cruel experiments. Orcs were originally captured elves, corrupted and mutilated, until they became twisted parodies of their former selves. This corruption ran so deep that even their offsprings were born in this warped, degraded form, becoming entirely distinct from the fair and noble elves they once were. Unlike their immortal progenitors, the Orcs were said to be short-lived, with lifespans that seemed to be closer to those of ordinary men, though not as long as the Edain, the Dunedain, the high men descended from the Three Houses and then later from Numenor. However, in the chaos of the Elder Days, this wasn't really always clear. Morgoth commanded many immortal servants among the Maya, who could have taken on terrifying forms to inspire fear and lead the Orcs. These beings, which were called Bulldogs, were far more powerful and long-lived than the Orcs they commanded, and were often mistaken for particularly great Orcs or Orc captains. So tales began to spread of these great Orcs, who would seemingly survive countless battles, reappearing to wreak havoc for far longer than any mortal creature should have. These figures were most likely than not Maiar in disguise or something similarly dreadful, working to impose Morgoth's will on his brutal, short-lived armies, while appearing as one of their own, as one of the Orcs. Thus, Orcs were bred for one purpose and one purpose only, for war. Morgoth and later Sauron shaped them to endure unimaginable brutality and thrive in the most inhospitable environments, conditioning them through pain, hardship, and violence. This upbringing, if we can call it that, forged them into creatures of remarkable endurance, of speed and resilience. Many Orcs, including the goblins and hobgoblins, lived in the dark caves and tunnels of Mordor, the Misty Mountains and beyond. These harsh, resource-starved environments honed their abilities, making them very good at scaling walls, navigating treacherous terrain, and squeezing through the narrowest crevices. They were also stated to be, at times, faster than the other folks, able to run and scram away with unending stamina. So when talking about stamina or resilience, we can take a look at the Uruk-hai that carried Merry and Pippin for tens if not hundreds of miles, from the slopes of Amon Hen, near the river of Anduin, all the way to the borders of Fangorn Forest, and would have gone all the way to Isengard. This would have shown the stamina and endurance the Uruk-hai had, although in part they might have been magically given strength by Saruman. These were led by Ugluk, the Uruk-hai that was larger than the ones under his command. Then there's the case of Gothmog, the lieutenant of Minas Morgul, who was second in command to the Lord of the Nazgul and thus by any means would have been a very powerful individual to lead the forces that were attacking Osgiliath and then later Minas Tirith. Gothmog would have had great resilience, determination, strength and endurance that no other orc would have possessed. But here's the thing, Tolkien never really described what he was. He could very well be a Black Numenorian or another of Sauron's dreaded servants, maybe even one of the Nazgul. We don't know. Therefore, before we end this video, let's take a look at what we think are the strongest orcs to have ever existed in Tolkien's Middle-earth, excluding the Bulldogs, which were essentially Maya spirits and orc forms. So the strongest I would say would be no doubt Gothmog, but then again his true nature is still a mystery. The next in line would be Azog the Defiler, who was able to kill a Dwarf Lord, although the Dwarf Lord was half exhausted but yet still a dwarf. Then we have Ugluk, the captain of the Isengard forces, the Uruk-hai, who commanded the Uruk-hai there to carry Merry and Pippin all the way from Amon Hen to Isengard. Well, they were stopped in Fangorn. Anyway, Bolt could also be here in the list, the son of Azog, as well as the Great Goblin, but not much is known about their strength, just that they were able to lead massive orc numbers, which could be a factor that can be correlated to their physical strength and size. So in the end, I would say that orcs are on average way weaker than men, dwarves and even elves. However, they are very resilient, very hardy and vile. There are some individuals that are stronger than the average man, but for the most part, they rely on numbers to win any battle. And so with that, we come to the end of this video. Do hit that like button for support and subscribe, and then smash that notification bell for regular updates. Till the next time, take care fam.